Welcome to SolPods Studio. We're not your average social network. We're a community of professionals, enthusiasts, and students taking sustainability to the next level. Join us on our journey and get inspired by Earth heroes just like you.
Welcome back to another episode of SolPods Studio. I'm Cassie Freyeisen, based in the Nashville, Tennessee area, and I'm joined here today with a local friend, Matt Loch, owner of Skeptic Meadery. I had the pleasure of meeting Matt at a local event a few months ago at Breed's Orchard in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. He was selling mead, and I had absolutely no idea what mead was. But when I saw honey, local fruit, and wine written on the board next to him, I had to learn more. Matt, I'm so happy you could join me here today.
Thanks for having me, Cassie.
So, Matt, what in the world is mead? And really, how does it differ from cider or wine made from grapes?
Well, yeah, as you said, wine is made from grapes, and cider is made from apples, or beer is made from grain. Mead is made from honey. So it is the world's oldest beverage. They believe it predates both beer and wine. And it's a very similar process as far as winemaking goes, except you don't have to crush anything. You just dilute honey with water and then add yeast if that's what you'd like to do. And it ferments out to be anywhere from 6% alcohol by volume to upwards of 18. You can serve it chilled, you can serve it room temperature, you can mull it over the stove with mulling spices. And then you can add pretty much anything you can imagine to it to enhance the flavor. It's very dexterous. Even though it's the world's oldest beverage, it actually has kind of a resurgence right now. Not too many people know about it, but it's starting to get more and more popular.
That's so cool, and I'm glad you're part of that. I'm a big fan of wine, but now you've converted me to the mead side, so thank you for doing that. Tell me a little bit more about yourself and how you really got into meadery.
Yeah, sure. So I have been going to school at University of Pittsburgh for chemistry, and at the time I had some friends who were getting into brewing beer. But being a poor college student, I, wanted to brew something, but I didn't want to get all the kit that came with making beer. So at the time, I was also reading a book that they had mentioned mead, and they described it as being sickly, sweet, and disgusting. And I thought, there's no way that you can, something made with honey is going to be gross. So I found a easy recipe online, tried it myself, used baker's yeast, bread yeast for it. It was passable, but I figured I could do better. And that was about 15 years ago. And that's been one of the only consistent things since then. I've worked a variety of odd jobs, lived in a couple different places, and the mead making has kind of followed me throughout all that. I enjoy making it. I enjoy talking about it. And one of the things that kind of how I came up with the name Skeptic is whenever I tell people like, "Hey, try this wine made from honey," they kind of give me a weird look. But it's a kind of a sneaky play on words because those old timey woven beehives that they would use in merry old England are called skeps. So I thought that was clever.
That's so interesting. And I love how it's been really a passion project that you've just brought to life, kind of through experimentation and also, your university degree, that you kind of put those two together and now you're doing something that you love. And I think that's really admirable.
Thank you.
So, bees and honey are such an important part of your process. And could you maybe explain how you really advocate for honey that's sourced here locally in Tennessee? And really, in your view, what is kind of the significance of supporting local biodiversity?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the big things with, making mead is that, the standard mead recipe is just honey, water, and yeast. And so the quality of all those three ingredients is going to play into the final flavor of the product. Actually, when you are drinking a glass of mead, you're drinking a flavor of the local area. Because as bees go out and they forage for nectar, they only travel about a mile away from their hive. So you're getting a very intense local flavor of wherever those bees are located. So if you have a standard mead, which is just a honey, water, and yeast, you're going to taste, the quality of all those three ingredients. So if you're getting a nice local honey, from East Tennessee, which is where I get my honey, you're going to taste what that area, tastes like. But if you get a mead that's made with honey collected in West Tennessee, it's going to taste different. Or if you get a honey from Pennsylvania, it's going to taste different. Or if you can even switch it up a little bit and get like a monofloral honey. I've recently just made one with tulip poplar honey. It tastes radically different than like a wildflower honey, which is a mix of a bunch of different things. I've previously made chicory blossom honey, which has a very sort of almost like a spicy roastiness that you would expect from chicory. And it's very unique. So it's fun in that way that you can experiment with different honeys and kind of see the story that the honey wants to tell.
Do you try to choose different honeys based on what kind of recipe you're putting together, what kind of flavor combinations, or do you like to really kind of support the same local vendors and you because you know that those are good quality honeys and you also want to support those local Tennessee bees, or do you like to kind of source different places for different varieties or different flavors of your mead?
For the bigger batch stuff, I do use one specific honey house out in East Tennessee, and that's just for the quantity of the honey that you need, and they're able to maintain quality and kind of ensure that quantity that you need. Honey doesn't grow out of the ground. It takes a long time for the bees to collect enough to make a gallon or 5 gallons or 25 gallons. So for a lot of my big production brews, I'm using the same type of honey, um, which will change over time as far as like early season, late season, all that. The people who work at the honey houses do their best to try to blend it to try to maintain a certain flavor profile, but there are some small changes. But one of the things that I love doing is I love buying from small local beekeepers that are maybe just hobby beekeepers that they're just trying to get into the hobby, and so that way you can kind of really taste the unique flavor of their neighborhood. Plus, it also puts a little extra money in their pocket so they can build more colonies and kind of increase the hobby. But I'm also not opposed to buying unique flavors of honey, just like the chicory blossom. It doesn't grow anywhere around here, but it imparts a really unique flavor that can really do well to illustrate the terroir of where that comes from.
I love that approach. And my husband, daughter, and I, we just drove a couple miles outside of Mount Juliet to get some local honey from one of the producers that we met at the Mount Juliet Farmers Market. And like you mentioned, it can really, the taste can really be dictated based on where those bees are. And this honey is delicious. So I'll be sure to share the farmers market, but then also the vendor of the bees. They're just delightful. I love how you support these small local producers. I think that's incredible business model that you have. I also wanted to just mention that a couple months ago, we had a podcast with Aiden Wing. He's a beekeeper out in California. And he really explained the importance of protecting bees and how really environmentally sensitive they are. And he said that we can actually use honeybees as a tool to look at our environment and to see the practices that are going on around us. And are we actually having a good impact on the bees around us? It can really dictate what we need to do differently. Do we need to make sure that we have more yards that have more flowers and natural blooms and stuff? Are we making sure that our streams are clean and our waterways are clean? So bees can really be a good tool for understanding what's going on in our environment and how do we as people and society need to change. I think you're in a business that really does make a difference how we treat our bees and how we're actually treating our environment as well.
Absolutely, yeah. They're very much the canary in the coal mine, just for how sensitive they are. Even just little things as like our yard, we don't grass seed or anything like that. We kind of let it go wild. We'll mow, of course, leave it a little bit longer, but having that variety of, wildflowers just kind of growing and all that can really make a difference for the local pollinators. One of the big issues is, colony collapse disorder, which I had listened to that podcast, and that was something that he had talked about, which absolutely correct, affecting honeybees. But one of the other things that people tend to forget about are the solo pollinators, worrying about the bumblebees and the mason bees and the carpenter bees. No one's out there making masonry, mason bee farms, apiaries. So it's anything you can do to help those wild pollinators too will really do wonders to kind of help the local environment as well.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. I have a garden and we do the same thing. We try to let our grass, but grow as long as possible. Then also I have lots of flowers, lots of local flowers too. So I think anything that we can all do, a little bit more during those crucial times for the bees and for biodiversity in general, I think it just goes a long way. If we can all just do a little bit more, we can have a healthier, more sound world. So thank you for that. At SolPods, we advocate for sustainable practices and especially support a culture of limiting waste. And I love how at Skeptic Meadery, you really take that into consideration. Can you explain how you avert local produce waste and happily accept fruit and other products, such as herbs, from getting wasted?
Yeah, so Skeptic Meadery is on site at Breeden's Orchard, and one of the things that I'm really passionate about is kind of being right there where the produce is. And so one of the things that I love to do is for peach season, if they've got a really big bumper crop or something like that, and peaches they don't look as pristine. They call them ice cream peaches, but they're great peaches for like baking with or something like that. They're maybe overripe, something along those lines. I love getting those peaches and then processing them and then brewing with them as a sort of way to make sure that we're not wasting them. Same deal with the apples, same deal with, I've actually, one of my favorite meads to make is a tomato mead. Where I crush the tomatoes, blend with the honey, and then ferment all that together. That one's a really fun one that comes up from time to time. Again, one of the reasons I named the place Skeptic is when I say, hey, you want to try this tomato mead? But tasting is believing, so that tends to go out pretty well. Yeah, and then also, on side of the orchard, and also, my partner's home farm that they've grow herbs and things like that, and so I try to incorporate those into my brews. And I try to source as much as I can from the immediate area or local farmers as much as possible. All the waste that we do, anything that I use for fermentation, any solids, gets composted, and then we use a septic system to kind of help go out and then irrigate the fields as well. All the chemicals I use are break down into natural consumable products, nothing harsh, nothing toxic. Everything is as friendly as we can make it. And then one of the other things that they're talking about up at the orchard that they would love to do is get some solar up there to kind of cut down on that sort of power consumption from the grid as much as we can. So that's ongoing discussion, and it's something that we're really kind of all passionate about up there on the hill.
Every event that's held at Breeden's, it's so lively and so fun, and there's so much always to learn. They're always teaching, around circularity or reducing waste or just supporting local businesses. I think that you chose a really great location to set up. So, and I love that you guys are composting. You're not using any of these harsh chemicals, and you're really just taking these steps into your business that I think a lot of small businesses could really take some of those tips and put those into what they're doing. So I think that's great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And another point on the sustainability front is really from the sourcing standpoint. So I understand that mead is truly a local product. And compared to a lot of beers, which use barley or hops that are typically grown from the western or northwestern part of the US, mead is a really good sustainable option, let's say, for people. Can you maybe speak more about this and your sourcing practices?
Sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of times when you think about the agricultural industry, you've got problems with soil depletion from growing monocrops and that sort of thing. With beekeeping, one of the primary ways that people make money off of beekeeping is they truck their hives out and then to pollinate the almond trees in California or something like that. And one of the ways that it's speculated that causes colony collapse disorder is that you've got all these different bee colonies from all across the country kind of commingling, and maybe the bees from North Dakota are immune to a certain disease, but they carry it with them. Now they're infecting bees from Florida or something along those lines. So you've got that commingling there that has deleterious effects on the bees population. But when you try to monetize local honey, it makes it more likely that the owner of those bees, well, hey, maybe I don't have to truck my bees out to California anymore to do that. I can stay here and work on my colonies and grow them here and kind of enhance this honey business. Additionally, one of the main benefits of having bees is it increases crop yields, like fruit trees. It'll increase their yield 60%. So, one of the things that we'd love to do is have bees at the orchard just to help with the peach trees and the apple trees. And then we could also take that honey that is a side product of the pollination and then brew with it. And then you're able to kind of benefit on that way as well. And so, like that's just something that it really kind of has a long term benefits as a for the environment as well as for a business.
I think that's really cool that Braden thinks about these things as well. So making sure that you do have those honeybees right there by the orchard, it's just a very a process that's touching all elements. And I also like that as well, that it's not just thinking about the peach trees and their harvest, but it's really think about how can we embrace our local environment as well. So I think that's great.
Because then we'll be able to come out with a standard mead that's the Breeden's mead. The taste the orchard. There's beehives on top of Vanderbilt University, and I would love to get some of that honey, and so you could taste what Vanderbilt University, tastes like. So we're working on that, and we'll hopefully get there one day.
Absolutely. And there's also bees on top of Alliance Bernstein building. So right down there, where there's a lot of the food vendors, like within that area, right downtown,
Hmm.
they have bees on top of their building as
Oh
well, which I think
wow.
is amazing. So it's really starting to pick up. I think that people are really starting to notice that these, things that we can do as businesses are going to hope make a difference for the environment, the local community that we live in. So I think that's really cool to see. I want to ask you, Matt, if someone wanted to jump into the mead making business, how would you suggest they get started? What are maybe some of the roadblocks you faced in your time and your years in doing this?
Yeah, so when I started my mead making journey, I was self-taught. I read about it in a book. I looked up something online. I'd never tasted a commercial mead because, 15 years ago, there weren't too many available in Pennsylvania state stores. I kind of started on my own, but looking online, looking for resources for help. One of the things I love about the mead making community is that it's still relatively small, and its prevailing mindset is a rising tide raises all ships, and so a lot of folks are really eager and excited to help. I like to say it's easy to make mead. It's more difficult to make good mead, and it's most difficult to make good mead repeatably. So don't get discouraged if your first batch winds up tasting like rocket fuel. Don't dump it. Please don't dump it. Bottle it and then age it, because a lot of times mead requires a lot of patience. And, it could, traditional methods take about maybe 6 months from brewing to bottling at, till the time that you have something that's palatable. It ages like a wine, so it may take maybe 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. I've had some really nice older meads that just tasted divine, and the only way to get there is through patience. Don't be afraid to experiment. Don't let people tell you it can't be done. One of the biggest roadblocks that I've encountered opening up, a meadery was people just don't know what it is. In Tennessee in general, you can count the number of meaderies on one hand. When I first started messing around with this, they didn't really know what mead was. And it's like, oh, well, do you want to be classified as a beer or a wine? So you have to do your research and come prepared, because things tend to progress more when you've got suggestions for the path to go. Ask questions, absolutely, but stay positive and keep moving forward. And then also there's the American Mead Makers Association. They're a really good advocacy group, a national advocacy group that sometimes they push stuff through Congress, or try to get clarity on things. They are a really great resource for setting up like a business plan or putting together like a pitch deck. And then it's also just a really nice community of professional mead makers that can give you feedback and give you opinions and things like that. Because if there's one thing the mead making community has in excess, it's opinions. So definitely spread that net wide and try to get as much information as you can. But don't be afraid to kind of step into that uncharted territory, because starting a business is scary. You put a lot on the line, and especially in an area where you say you're a mead maker and people say meat, like a butcher. Like I've heard that more times than I care to admit. Just got to keep doing it, and maybe the first 5 minutes of your pitch is explaining what it is, but after the first sip, you've you've got a customer on your hands. So just keep at it, and don't be dissuaded.
Keep at it. Use the resources around you. Maybe join an association, Mead Makers Association, like you mentioned. Just try to convert all the people out there that might be interested. And I will say, I've watched a few people when I was chatting with you. People come up to your stand and they don't know what it is, but then they take that sip and they're really interested and they want to learn more. And I think that's so cool to find a product that you've never had before, but there's something intriguing around it. And I saw a lot of people, they come to try your product and then they end up buying a glass or buying a bottle. And it was really exciting to see, like, they had no idea what it was, but they tried it and they said, wow, this is really unique, really interesting. I want more. So I love your advice there. Keep going, stay motivated, use your network, and stay passionate about what you're doing as well, because you obviously need that passion to produce something so unique and so beautiful. So we've talked about Breedens a lot. And you have your shop, you have your meadery there. How can others here in the Nashville area come and support you and support Skeptic Meadery?
Well, it's still early days right now. My meat is available up at the orchard. We're looking into getting into a handful of bars and restaurants, and maybe a liquor store or two. I can't mention any names yet, but we're hoping to have something starting in 2024, if not sooner. And I think the best way to stay in touch now is follow on social media, Facebook or Instagram. I've got a website, skepticmeadery.com. I try to update that as much as I can. We haven't had an official grand opening yet. That's coming in the spring, so stay tuned for that, and hopefully we'll be able to grow out, and you'll be able to find us other places as well.
And if there's a business or a farm that was interested in donating products to you for your mead making, are you open to that? Because that might be an area for collaboration. There might be some farms or, some businesses that might want to donate honey to you as well. Is that something that you'd be interested in working with them on?
Absolutely. I mean, I've already had a lady come up and say like, "Hey, we always have more figs than we know what to do with coming off of our trees. Like, is that something you think you can do something with?" And it's like, absolutely, bring them on down. Previously, I've had a guy just set down a big old paper bag filled with pawpaw, and he's like, "Hey, can you do something with this?" And it's like, "Hey, let's figure it out. We'll do it." So. Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to me. I've got a contact form on the website or just on social media. Like, I'd love to talk. If you've got honey that you're interested in selling, absolutely talk to me about it. So
That's wonderful. I love that. And maybe you can also think about being at some of the local farmers markets too in the future. That could be great. I know you're busy at the orchard, but maybe from time to time sneak into some of the farmers markets would be awesome. But I love that. I love that you're willing to, take donations of, products, and that way you get also those local products.
absolutely.
You mentioned the pawpaw, and that's a local Maryland fruit, correct? I think that's local to.
They kind of grow in this band. There are pawpaw that you can forage. It's a very difficult fruit to actually try to grow because it needs to grow in the kind of underneath the tree canopy.
Okay.
And so, folks who are expert foragers at pawpaw, they don't tell you where they go because they've got their spots. But we're actually trying to see if we can maybe grow some or seed some in some under some canopy trees, and hopefully we can maybe make it a more regular thing. But time will tell.
Cool. I love the fig idea. I'm a big fig person. So if you put that into the blend, let me know. I would love to try that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Big fig girl. So, what products are you really excited about on the menu right now and going into the holidays? And I can really imagine some cool festive flavors that you're brewing right now.
Sure. So I've got one available for retail now that's a chocolate cherry mead. I had first made that for my sister's wedding reception. It was, everybody at the wedding reception took a bottle home to celebrate, and then I gave my sister and my brother-in-law a case of it to open a bottle on every anniversary. So I kind of incorporated that recipe, and it's available for sale now. We're going to be bottling cranberry orange mead and then more standard mead. This batch of standard, I don't know what it was about the seasonality of the honey or something like that, but it's just one of the best ones that I've done yet. And then I also have a more experimental spruce tip and juniper berry. So kind of like tasting a Christmas tree a little bit. That one's really fun.
Sounds delicious. Okay, Matt, I have one last question for you, and I need to get your brain bubbling a little bit. So, as a wrap up, we really like to ask all of our guests this question to close out our episode. If you had one sustainability superpower to help change the world for the better, what would it be and why?
So I think I would have to say if I could shoot beams of patience out of my eyes, that would be the thing. Kind of imbue people with more patience. A lot of times, we as a society like to rush, 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 hurry, hurry, hurry. Let's get things now. Let's get things today without that sort of long-term patience. Whether it comes to, an infrastructure repair program where you're putting in sidewalks and bike lanes, or, investing in the local green space to, planting small twigs of trees. People want answers and solutions today, but you need the fortitude and the wisdom to be able to plant a seed for a tree, knowing that you may never sit in its shade. And having patience, with the brewing process. You can't rush things sometimes. That the yeast is going to take as long as it takes, and sometimes that's how it is. Sometimes the batch that you just brewed tastes a little off or something like that. Just sit on it and let it age out, and taste it in a year or two. It kind of, I feel like we would benefit as a species if we were able to have a little bit more patience with each other and with our surroundings.
That's beautiful. And thinking about nature, things take time. And that's the beauty of our world is things aren't always ready, tomorrow, but if we take the time that they need and we give them the love and the nurturing, then at the end of the day, we can have some beautiful things or beautiful products or beautiful relationships with people. So thank you, Matt, so much for being here today. I learned so much about the mead making process. When I first met you, I had no idea what it was, and you really opened my eyes to mead making in general. And I really hope that others go out and explore this delicious drink with friends and family over the holidays. We cannot forget that Small Business Saturday is right around the corner on November 25th. And I really encourage everyone to support small local businesses like Matt's business, Skeptic Meadery, who are not only making amazing quality products, but they're really taking sustainability into account into their business operations and into their approach. And if you're in the Nashville area or living in this area or visiting in December, don't forget to stop by Breeden's Orchard for your next mead tasting. Check with Breeden's with their social media handles just to see what exact dates that they'll be having events. I couldn't encourage you more to go check out that beautiful orchard, check out the meadery, learn more about Matt and his products at skepticmeadery.com. And again, Matt, thanks so much for all of your guidance, all of your stories, and thank you to our listeners as well. So until next time.
Thanks, Cassie. We'll see you up at the meadery.
SolPods Studio is made possible by listeners like you. Join the free SolPods platform to become a part of our virtual community of changemakers. Links to our social media, website, and platform can be found below in the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, feel free to rate and review our podcast. Thank you for listening and for your support.